Asymmetrical centerpieces are some of my favorite centerpieces, but they can be tricky to design. This month in my online community FlowerMore, for our monthly floral design challenge, our members are challenged with creating their own asymmetrical centerpieces. In today's video, I'm going to walk you through step by step how I make a simple asymmetrical centerpiece. My name's Ellen Frost. I'm building a community of flower nerds online by sharing knowledge and creating connections. I also have a weekly flower newsletter which you can subscribe to today. The link is in the notes. So to get started, I'm going to be using a footed bowl, and I'm going to be using two mechanics today. So the first mechanic I'm going to use is a flower frog, and this is really important if you're going to be using any heavy design elements. So I'm going to be using some branches. I'm going to secure my frog with alien tape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put the two-sided tape on the bottom of my frog and then stick it into the bottom of this vase. So I've got it in there nice and secure. Then the second mechanic I'm going to use is sort of a backup mechanic. This is a tube of chicken wire that I'm going to fold so that it fits inside my vase. And then I'm going to put a piece of tape. So these mechanics take a little while to secure, but they're super important because, especially in the case of creating an asymmetrical design, we are creating something that is inherently a little bit off balance. So we want to make sure that our flowers are nice and secure so nothing tips over. When we're thinking about asymmetry, we're thinking about a design as a high point, a midpoint, and a low point. And they're going to be sort of off-centered. But the trick with making a great asymmetrical centerpiece is to balance the visual sort of heaviness of the flowers. If you have something high, you have to have something low to balance it. So that's going to be our trick today, is to make a high point, a midpoint, and a low point with some negative space in between. That's why asymmetrical designs can be a little bit tricky. I know that negative space is something that make people a little bit nervous, but we are going to do our best to create these 3 points in our design today. And I'm going to start with my heaviest elements. So I'm going to be first using some unripe persimmon branches today. I am so excited about these. These were grown right here in Baltimore City. They have beautiful unripened persimmon fruit on them, along with beautiful foliage. So I'm going to use these to create my lines. So I'm going to use this first one as my high point. And anytime I'm using a woody stem, so anything with like a branchy stem, I want to give it not only a angled cut, but I want to cut up into the stem like so to give it a little more room to take up water. Anytime you're using woodies, it's hard for them to take up water. They just have such strong stems. So this just gives them a little bit more room to take up water. Okay, so I'm using this nice long line to give me my tall high point. The next piece I'm going to put in is my midpoint. And this is going to be, like I said, my midpoint. So I'm leaving a low point here in the middle. Okay, so now that I've got my shape, I'm going to use a little bit of foliage to sort of mimic these lines. I'm going to use a little bit of 9 bark. This is a really pretty bicolored 9 bark, and I'm going to use it to enhance the line. So following right along with my persimmon line to really show that asymmetrical shape. I'm going to use a little bit of this raspberry foliage as well. This is thornless raspberry. This is one of my favorite foliages because it is available in the late spring. It goes all through summer and the fall. So I'm going to use a tiny bit of this cut a little bit lower to fill in and cover my mechanic a little bit. And as I'm placing each of these pieces, I want to make sure that I continue to have this really strong tall piece, medium, and low piece. And if I feel like that center is getting too filled up, I can always come in and prune some of these leaves off so that I'm keeping that center free. I heard somebody say it's like you want space for a bird to be able to fly through the center of your design. So I'm keeping that nice and open. One of the things that I see a lot of people doing when they start making asymmetrical designs is something that we call bunny ears, and it is really a challenge. It's when you're placing these two sides, these 2 points at the same plane. That's what gives you the sense of bunny ears. And you really want to make sure that you have a tall and a medium point, that this point is really lower than your tall point. All right, so next I'm going to place some of these marigolds, and I'm really using marigolds as what I would consider a secondary focal. These are face flowers, so they're round, but they're not like the star of the show. These are really going to be face flowers that are a little bit more in the background. And I'm going to put a few of these in, following right along the lines that we have created already. All right, next I'm going to take some zinnias, which again, I would say these are secondary focals. I'm going to be using their face flowers, but the dahlias are really going to be our focal. So I'm going to be using these zinnias as secondary focals to fill in the same sort of way I did with the marigolds. All right, I'm keeping this line. I'm going to float this zinnia a little bit higher above everything just to enhance that line. Again, this is more sort of precision and precise placement. All right, next I'm going to be using dahlias as my focal flower. And I've got my tall, my medium, and my low point. And then in the center here, where I've really left a lot of room, I want to create a focal spot. So a place where my eye travels down this line to a focal spot. So I'm going to be putting my dahlias in here as the focal point of the arrangement. And I'm going to cluster a couple of them in the middle here to really create that focal center. And since I'm using a lot of face flowers, I want to make sure that my face flowers are not all on the same plane. And what I mean by that is I don't want them to be cut at the same length, and I don't want them all to be facing the exact same direction. So that's why I'm keeping this one a little bit lower, twisting this face sideways a little bit so that they're not facing you straight on. So I'm liking how it's looking, but I want to make sure that my medium doesn't get lost so that it becomes a sort of straight horizontal line. So I've got my tall piece and I feel like I have my balanced lower pieces, but I want to make sure that this medium size doesn't get lost. So I'm going to add a little bit over here to balance this tall piece and also to make sure that this line remains a line. So these are some cosmos. This is apricota, and they were super beautiful this week. They're sort of a pinky, peach colored. And I've got two different colors. I've got a pink and sort of this yellow. This is Xanthos, I think is the name of this one. It's a really pretty light yellow. And everything I'm doing, I'm still continuing to follow these lines, right? So I've got, again, my tall line, medium, low. All right, I'm gonna add a few more cosmos. So I don't want to overfill this design, but I do want to fill in some of the small places where I can see my mechanics. I don't want to see any of the chicken wire, so I'm going to use some short stems of both foliage and flowers to fill in. So I'm going to first fill in a little bit with, this is cherry caramel phlox, and I recently wrote an article about this flower. I love this flower, but you can see this is how short mine came from the farmer. I met a flower friend in Asheville this summer who grew them and had them that they were almost like 24 inches tall. I was completely jealous, and normally I would not buy flowers this short, but these are so cute that I have to still buy them and find ways to use them in designs. So for this, I'm going to use them to tuck in low in my arrangement to cover up some of my mechanics. The reason that I love this flower so much is because these bicolored blooms are a perfect bridge flower between many of the colors that I'm using today. So it's got this creamy yellow, it's got a sort of peach, and then a pink. It's really great as a bridge flower. So bridging my darker colors of like bright pink with like the lighter colors of yellow. In addition to these, I have some teeny tiny Puccino Lisianthus. Now, these are not supposed to be this small, but this is how they came, and I wanted to find a way to use them. So I'm actually going to trim off these little buds, and then I'm going to force these open. They're pretty sturdy, so I'm just going to bend their petals back a little bit. This is called reflexing, so that you can really see the entire flower. So I'm going to add a few of these. And again, I don't want to overfill, so I'm being careful not to fill in every spot. You can reflex a lot of different flowers. Tulips are one that a lot of people reflex. People reflex roses. Lisianthus is a fun one to do. So this is called Love in a Puff. It is a vine that has these adorable little puffs on the stems. So I'm going to add a few of these in. These last little details of the Love in the Puff are, I think, the thing that sets apart really special designs, because I think a lot of people would just say, oh, they're too much of a pain to clean up and to include, but look at that little piece. It's too cute to skip. All right, this is my last piece, and for all of these pieces, I'm still following my lines. And these are extra special because I think they do, the shape of them mimic the persimmon a little bit. So you're getting a little bit of a repeat of that shape and that color. I'm going to pair them, place them near the persimmon. All right, so there you have it. This is my submission for our monthly design challenge in FlowerMore for an asymmetrical centerpiece. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to my free weekly flower newsletter for more flower content.